With Amazon's ramp-up in marketing surrounding the new Lord of the Rings series, The Rings of Power, most recently facilitated by a flurry of news released from San Diego Comic-Con, potential viewers have gotten the chance to see more from the show and to get a better feel for the studio's and showrunners' take on Middle-earth. While I'm sure many are still excited about The Rings of Power after having seen or even in getting to attend Comic-Con, after watching the latest trailers and one particular panel with the showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, I'm left feeling much more pessimistic about the show than I ever have before. So in this video, I'd like to talk about the primary reasons for my pessimism regarding the show, as well as a few elements from the series that I am still genuinely looking forward to. Previously on the channel, I've cited my concerns with some critical factors influencing the development of this series, namely with the revelation that Amazon does not have the rights to the most significant Second Age writings of Tolkien, primarily those found in the Silmarillion and the Unfinished Tales. I've also expressed my disappointment after discovering that the showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay have chosen to compress the timeline of the Second Age. As the Vanity Fair article that released this information put it, quote, Payne and McKay have compressed events into a single point in time. It is their biggest deviation from the text, and they know it's a big swing. Add to this the fact that the showrunners also cited the following as a driving question behind the production. Quote, can we come up with the novel Tolkien never wrote, and do it as the mega event series that could only happen now? After I got over my initial astonishment of the sheer hubris it would take to think they could make the novel Tolkien never wrote, I initially felt it was accurate to label this series as nothing more than fan fiction. That being said, I must say that there is such a thing as good fan fiction if it's made carefully and with the proper reverence to the author. As such, had this been the path that Amazon took with their series, many fans could have felt free to either take it or leave it as a part of their headcanon, depending on whether or not they felt the show was sufficiently Tolkienian. However, instead of taking this approach to tell a new story, the showrunners alternatively have decided to depict several major canonical events of the Second Age in their series, and to combine these events into a single point in time to create their quote, mega event series. And now, given the additional details that have been revealed about the story changes being made for this series, instead of classifying it as fanfiction as I had previously, I would now tend to describe The Rings of Power as something similar to Marvel's What If series. As has been the case since I first learned of it, the time compression decision is by far the biggest problem I continue to have with this show. By choosing this route, they've made it impossible for many fans of Tolkien's Second Age stories, including myself, to consider Amazon's addition to Middle-earth as anything more than a what-if scenario. I'm also assuming that in naming the series what they have, that the forging of the Rings of Power will be a significant part of the show's arc. In canon, the forging of the greater 16 rings takes place around the year 1500 of the Second Age, with Sauron's corruption of the elves taking place hundreds of years prior to that. However, a few of the major canonical characters Amazon has chosen to include in their series are only born in the later years of the Second Age, around the time of the fall of Numenor, another significant event that the showrunners wish to depict. The primary reason given for this giant deviation from Tolkien's writing is another major problem that I have with the showrunners, and by extension the studio's approach in general. In the interview with Vanity Fair, showrunner J.D. Payne attempts to explain this decision, saying, quote, if you are true to the exact letter of the law, you are going to be telling a story in which your human characters are dying off every season because you're jumping 200 years in time. And then you're not meeting really big, important canon characters until season 4. Look, there might be some fans who want us to do a documentary of Middle-earth, but we're going to tell one story that unites all these things. The reason given by J.D. Payne for the time compression decision is the most baffling to me. The mortality of man is a significant factor not only in the fall of Numenor, but also in many other stories told in Middle-earth in general. So the fact that the showrunners simply don't want to bother with recasting human characters as needed indicates their tendency to favor the convenient and easy path over the more challenging yet faithful one. And I really don't understand the second half of his reasoning, specifically that you couldn't meet really big, important canon characters until Season 4. I'll admit that this largely depends on what they classify as an important canon character. However, I fail to see how the depiction of any one of the major events of the Second Age would not inherently contain at least a couple of these important figures. Needless to say, the flimsy nature of the showrunners' excuses for their approach to the show after the release of the Vanity Fair article had me feeling quite negative. These feelings were only compounded with what I heard from the showrunners in the Rings of Power Hall H Comic-Con panel hosted by Stephen Colbert. When asked about whether the series was always meant to be set in the Second Age, within Payne's reply, he stated that Amazon had bought the rights to basically 10,000 years of Middle-earth history. Given what we know about the rights Amazon has, I found the statement to be quite deceptive and misleading. His words in of themselves lead one to believe that Amazon has the rights to the stories told in those 10,000 years. However, as mentioned previously, they do not have those rights. Another misleading statement from Payne came later when he cited the fact that they had gotten to work with esteemed Tolkien scholar Tom Shippey during the production of the show. While it's true that Shippey was initially brought in to consult on the show, his exit from the project has been well documented. Admittedly, I have no knowledge of what all happened to facilitate his exit. However, based on Shippey's original comments regarding the requirements for the series, namely that it would have to stay within the main shape of the Second Age, compared to the direction they have now taken the series, I tend to personally believe that the two sides did not see eye to eye. Needless to say, the fact that Payne name-dropped Tom Shippey in particular, without naming any other experts, feels like another intentional misdirect in an attempt to quash that particular controversy. I also found myself dismayed at a few of Patrick McKay's comments in this panel as well, particularly when he said that in making the series, they didn't want to do a side thing or a spin-off, or the origin story of something else. They instead wanted to find a huge Tolkienian mega-epic. After hearing this comment, I couldn't help but feel a sense of tremendous greed emanating from the showrunners. Not willing to be content with the telling of one event in the time frame and setting that Tolkien intended, they instead wanted to adapt it all. In order to accomplish this, of course, time compression would be their chosen vehicle. This sense of greediness with the story continued to be reinforced as the panel continued. In particular, I found one of Payne's comments the most upsetting. In his response to a question from Colbert regarding the inclusion of a Hobbit storyline in the Second Age, Payne vehemently pushed back against the notion that Harfoots and Hobbits were one and the same, saying, quote, "Because it's actually not technically a Hobbit story, it's a Harfoot story. And so Tolkien doesn't say anything about Harfoots not having done anything amazing in the Second Age. He says that Hobbits, before the Third Age, didn't do anything impressive. So we felt we had license there to go ahead and tell a good Harfoot story." From this, I have to say that I find it quite disturbing how someone could arrive at this understanding from what is clearly laid out about hobbits in the prologue of Tolkien's Fellowship of the Ring. There it is plainly stated that Harfoots, along with Fallowhides and Stores, are 3 breeds of hobbit. In fact, shortly after this, in describing the Fallowhides, Tolkien stated that they were more friendly with elves than the other hobbits were. From this, I can definitely and demonstrably state that there can be no separation of these 3 breeds from their umbrella classification as hobbits. While on its face this may seem trivial, it once again paints a negative light on the true intentions of the showrunners. Payne's attempt to separate Harfoots from hobbits, even though Tolkien clearly indicated they are the same, to me only comes across as deceitful, disingenuous, and insincere. In essence, they want to have their cake and eat it too, in what comes off as a gluttonous approach to telling stories in Middle-earth. Overall, the fact that these are the hands into which the rights of Tolkien's writings have fallen is the primary reason I remain doubtful that I will be able to enjoy this series as a whole. Now, here at the end, I want to make clear that I don't hold anything against anyone who is still looking forward to this show, or toward anyone who holds a different view. These are my own personal opinions, and because I have covered both this Amazon series and Middle-earth content in the past, I have heard from several commenters who want to hear my opinion. All this being said, I still am looking forward to a few isolated elements that will come from this show. Specifically, I'm excited to see any work which Weta Studios or Weta Digital has been involved with, as I've consistently been impressed with their work on this property in the past. The same can be said for the amazing work of John Howe, who was also involved. Also, I feel it was a great decision for the studio to hire Bear McCreary, as I've thoroughly enjoyed the music he has made and the work he has done on other series such as Battlestar Galactica. My mindset moving forward is the same I've had to take with many of my other fandoms, and it's one of compartmentalization. This is something I've gotten used to doing as a lifelong fan of various science fiction and fantasy properties. For instance, while I love Dune, I dislike many aspects of David Lynch's 1984 adaptation and large swaths of Brian Herbert's extended universe books. And while I'm extremely put off by what Disney has done to the Star Wars franchise, I'll still allow myself to feel optimistic about certain projects, and I even have thoroughly enjoyed Star Wars shows from Disney like The Mandalorian. Likewise, with Rings of Power, I'm determined to pick out and savor those few elements from the series that I still anticipate I'll enjoy, and then I'll readily dismiss and disregard the more unfaithful elements of the show that stand out and really bother me as a fan of Tolkien's work. I also very much look forward to continuing my dives into the lore of Middle-earth, regardless of how this Amazon series turns out. Anyways, if you've listened this long, I want to thank you for hearing me out in this rant. While I try to focus on the aspects of science fiction and fantasy properties I enjoy, it's often quite therapeutic to express my frustrations as well. And I'm also curious to know what you think about this series. Are you looking forward to the Rings of Power, or do you have similar concerns? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and be sure to subscribe for more Lord of the Rings and other sci-fi and fantasy news and lore. Thank you all so much for your support, and as always, have a very nerdy day.